On today's episode of Academia of Faith, we're going to look into how faith before fear can lead to the fullness God always intended you to have. My name is Chelsea Grow, stand-up comedian, writer, actress, singer, and just all-around sassy, fun gal. So I'm going to be exploring in this episode how My Hero Academia ties in with faith, and I'm going to be tying in my personal funny experiences as well. Get ready to buckle in, and let's get started. So My Hero Academia is, in my opinion, one of the greatest shows to ever be created. Animated, live action, single cam, multicam, whatever category, one of the best shows ever created. There's so many layers of themes in this show that I love. And so I've always, as a Christian woman, noticed like the spiritual tie-ins. And this show has definitely got me through some hard times. There's been times when I've been down and out and I've watched the show and, it's given me the motivation that I've needed to like push forward. In honor of the final season of My Hero Academia, now streaming, we're going to go episode by episode of the final season, but we're also going to go back to some of my favorite episodes from season 1 through 7 that I think will tie in and all have a beautiful spiritual deep meaning. And yeah, let's get started. So let's just start at the beginning. Izuku Midoriya, this is a beautiful origin story that starts off with a young boy. Now, this takes place in modern-day Japan, okay? In modern-day Japan, 80% of the people walking on this earth have some kind of meta-human superpower, right? And so they are now the majority walking on the planet. On the flip side, the 20% of people that are born without quirkless is not only rare, but they are considered like, the outcast of society. So Midoriya is born without a quirk. His parents have quirks. There's no reason why he shouldn't have one, but he doesn't. However, this guy's got the heart of a lion because he loves All Might. All Might is by all means the best superhero, the most powerful #1 hero in the world. And everybody loves this guy. He's super strong. He's super fast. I mean, he's basically like a modern day Superman, essentially, like times 20,000. Midoriya grows up idolizing All Might, okay? Now, he gets told in kindergarten age by a doctor, you should give up hope. You're not going to have any powers. Now, this is really crushing to somebody like Midoriya who has spent his entire childhood idolizing such a powerful entity as All Might. And with all that being said, he gets told, even by his mother, he sits there with tears in his eyes watching All Might on the screen after the doctor's diagnosis and being like, Mom, is there any way that like I could still become a hero? And his mother softly and gently denies him, right? And it's tough because, even though she loved him, it's hard for a parent to see their child want something, but the parent can't see the pathway. So sometimes when a parent doesn't see the pathway, they just kind of like say no, right? But with all that being said, Midoriya never gives up hope. He spends his entire childhood watching superheroes, taking notes, watching them fight live and deciding and learning what moves they make and how they use their powers and how they can use their powers to their advantage in ways that they may not even realize. I mean, Midoriya has even been teased his entire life by this young boy named Bakugo and so Katsuki. So I always forget how to say Japanese names, so forgive me. I'm doing my best. But anyway, we'll just call him Bakugo. Bakugo was born with a powerful quirk. He can make explosions come out of his hands. Really dope. He can use them to fly, maneuver, attack, all of that. So he's already in line to go to the top superhero school, which is called U of A, which is also Midoriya's dream school. Now, throughout the pilot episode, Midoriya is getting teased by Bakugo and his friends, being told, like, you're not going to be a hero, you don't have a quirk, you're worthless, all of that, right? And Midoriya, even though it pains him, he still holds on to his faith deep down, right? So he's walking through the streets one day, and then this guy, well, he's not really a guy, he's a villain. It's called Sludge Villain, right? Now, Sludge Villain is basically like it sounds. He's like a pile of sludge that like commits crimes. But in order to like hide, sometimes he'll enter someone's body in sludge form. So Midoriya is walking home after being teased by Bakugo. He gets, attacked by the Sludge Villain, and then All Might comes out of nowhere, defeats the Sludge Villain, puts him in two liters of like, I don't know, we'll say Coca-Cola bottles or soda bottles, and then he's planning to take him to the police. So, Midoriya, right when All Might flies off, he looks back and realizes Midoriya is still holding on to him. He will not let go. So then finally he lands, and then All Might goes from this big muscular form and he deflates into like basically like a toothpick, right? And you're like, hold on, All Might, what happened to your muscles? Because like this is kind of crazy. So then we fast forward to Midoriya sitting there asking All Might, okay, well, like, All Might, like, even though I don't have a quirk, could I be a superhero? Now, this is the moment where he has to sit there and say, no, young man, you can't, right? He's like, you could be a police officer. And some of you guys are like hoping, like in this moment, like the great almighty, is he going to give him hope? But he's very honest. Because like we don't know why he's deflated into a toothpick yet. I'll tell you that in a second. But now that he's deflated into this smaller size, he's humble and almost embarrassed as well, because this young man who idolizes him is now seeing him in a different light. So this is how, he's introduced to All Might, and his dreams are crushed once again. And that's kind of like how the first episode essentially like rounds out. So now we get into episode 2, okay? They're still on the rooftop. All Might is still in his like skinny toothpick form. And then he still has abs, by the way, which I'm like, oh, go All Might. Okay. So then we fast forward to him walking off after he's rejecting him. He realizes the sludge villain fell out of his pockets. And then they see all this commotion on the other side of the city. Fast forward, All Might gets over there. But the thing is like All Might has revealed to Midoriya that he can only be in hero form for 3 hours a day because he was in a huge fight years prior that left him with no stomach. And also, I'm like, it's crazy he has no stomach because, you'll see later on the series, All Might be eating. I'm like, okay, well, where does it go? Anyway, so he has no stomach. Most of his respiratory system is gone because of this fight he got into. And so, he can only be hero form for so many hours, which is a short amount of time. And so he's in that state. He's already maxed out at capacity because he was helping Midoriya. Fast forward, here we are, Bakugo and his friends were like walking down an alleyway. Bakugo kicks these bottles, unknowingly realizing that Sludge Villain is inside. So now Sludge Villain is out, and now he's trying to attack Bakugo. Bakugo's fighting back, which leads to this huge commotion in the city. Everyone's surrounded. All these heroes are coming out of nowhere, but because Sludge Villain isn't like a solid form, he's kind of like this translucent glue kind of shape, the heroes are having a hard time trying to contain him, right? So the only one that could really contain him is All Might. All Might shows up to the scene, hiding in the background. No one recognizes him because he's just like skinny with like a strange haircut. And so everyone's like, oh, that's just another guy. Now, Midoriya is walking by, and there's this powerful moment where, like, Midoriya and All Might are both looking at the sludge villain and all the mayhem that's going around. So Midoriya is sitting there, and he's replaying all the negative thoughts that are in his head. And this can happen sometimes, right? Like, in life, you're called to do something, but you can't help but, like, be stuck replaying what everyone said you couldn't do. So Midoriya now has to make a decision, and All Might has to make a decision. And they're both wrestling this inner wrestling situation going on. So out of nowhere, All Might's calling himself pathetic and he can't do it. And there's a moment where Midoriya looks and realizes the child that the sludge villain has captured is Bakugo, okay? Y'all remember the one that was talking all that smack earlier? And by the way, as you watch My Hero Academia, you will notice that Bakugo has a lot of anger. And I'll be like, dang, fam, like, no wonder you got explosions as a gift. You couldn't have got flowers because you would have ripped them up. Anyway, so Bakugo is even in his capture state, still got his attitude. He's still on 10,000. But in that moment that Midoriya realizes that Bakugo's the kid, his body just goes into action. No quirk, no weapons, no physical ability, no reason to think he can even defeat the sludge villain. But yet here goes Midoriya running full speed ahead to rescue Bakugo. So now here we are, he's just clawing away at the sludge villain and he's just going, right? And this is such a beautiful moment because in this moment, All Might sees this and realizes, wait a second. That kid has no superpowers. He has nothing. He has no advantages. But yet he's going and he's doing what a hero is supposed to do. Because a real hero puts himself in danger. A real hero, looks past the fear they're feeling and goes to help other people. And that's what Midoriya did. Without anything to support that decision, just pure faith. Now, this activates All Might, okay? So he musters up whatever energy he's got. He goes into his full superhero form, defeats Sludge Villain, rescues Bakugo, protects Midoriya, and that is how episode 2 rounds out. Now, let's get into episode 3, okay? Now, this episode is wonderful because we found out a secret about All Might, okay? Again, this guy's the most powerful superhero of all time. So everyone's just thinking that, man, he just was born with this power, But here's the tea. So the reason that he, has this power is because it was passed on to him by his mentor, right? And the thing is like this power that All Might has is called One for All. It's a power that keeps building with each person it's passed on to. Each person that carries it adds their own elements to it. It gets cultivated. And then when it's passed on to the next person, that power is then, it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So it's wild because All Might told Midoriya he couldn't be a superhero because he was born without a quirk. Whole time, All Might was born without a quirk too. I'm like, All Might, why was you over here like capping, talking about he couldn't be a superhero? Meanwhile, you wasn't born with a power either, fam. But I get it. All Might was like, I can't tell everybody my secret, so let me keep it cute. I get it. But now the secret's out. It's just him and Midoriya on the street, okay? And he tells Midoriya, like, look, okay, I want you to be my successor. And Midoriya is like, wait, me, huh? And it's wild because, he's wanted a quirk for so long. Here it is in front of him, and he's still speaking with doubt. But that's okay. Humans, that's how we do. So now he's told, okay, I am going to accept this power. And then All Might, you think he's just gonna, like, I don't know, tap him, because who knows how powers are transferred? Like, is he gonna tap him? Are they gonna, like, do a hip bump? Is it an eye contact thing? Does he have to drink his blood? Which would be kind of like, True Blood or kind of like Vampire-y. So I'm glad they didn't do that. But before he even tells him how he's going to transfer his power, All Might looks at Midoriya and says, if I gave you this power right now, it would literally destroy you because your body is not ready to receive it. I said, oh, okay, All Might getting deep. And, already there's like some scriptural, things going on. I'm going to tie all that in, I promise. But to wrap it, the next 10 months, Midoriya spends it getting trained by All Might in secret on this beach, right? And he tells him, not only do I want you to use this to like get your body in shape, but you're also going to clean this beach because this beach is filthy. This beach is supposed to be, enjoyed by the citizens, but there's all this trash there. People have unloaded all their trash there, right? And so it's a double entendre because Midoriya has to like get rid of all the trash. He's got to get rid of like the trash way he was thinking for a while, thinking that he couldn't do it. The trash that people told him that he was never going to be a superhero because he was quirkless. He's got to get rid of all of that. But also the theme that All Might's trying to show him is like, hey, heroes are to be of service, okay? And it's not all about like fighting bad guys and punching slime. It's about like, hey, let me like give my hand and use what I've been given to help others and create a safer, happier place for citizens and those around me, okay? Now, we see Midoriya going months and months and months, like, and he's breaking his body, he's lifting all this weight, he's all this stuff, and you're looking at this kid, and you're like, man, I know this is a cartoon, but I'm tired, okay? I said, now he's picking up refrigerators and, like, old computers. I'm talking about the old 1980 computers that are, like, the size of, like, 75 sumo wrestlers, like, those computers. Like, he's lifting up all this stuff, and you can see the exhaustion. In fact, Midoriya wears himself out so much that it gets to a point where he passes out a couple months before the entrance exam at UA, his dream school where he's going to apply. And he's passed out. And then All Might realizes, oh my gosh, Midoriya, you've been overworking yourself. So he's like, man, I have. And then All Might says you can't overwork yourself. That's going to have an adverse effect. But I love Midoriya's response. He basically says, I have to work harder than everybody else to get to where I'm going because I'm already coming at it at a disadvantage. I'm getting a quirk later. I don't know how it's all going to work, but I know that I'm going to work harder. And so this even more impresses All Might to confirm he made the right decision. So now it's the final day. It's the day of the entrance exam. And there's this beautiful moment where like All Might gets to the beach. And here's Midoriya in true like Karate Kid, Midoriya fashion. He's standing on top of a pile of trash. And he's just going, yes! Yeah, he's just like going in, right? And this is a great moment because, again, I know it's a cartoon, but I was like, okay, Midoriya, I had to like fan myself a little bit. I said, come on, back muscles, side muscles, the triceps and the biceps, all of them was eluding. I said, okay, Midoriya got himself in tip-top shape. I know that cartoonist was tired. They're like, dang, I gotta draw deltoids and feltoids and keltoids and all of it. He had all the toys in the body. I said, okay, Midoriya, I see you. So anyway, Midoriya has this powerful moment, and that's when he realizes, and All Might also realizes that he's finally able to receive the blessing. He can receive it now. He did the work to receive it. So it's kind of funny how it all kind of rounds out because now Midoriya is sitting there like, okay, I'm ready to take the power. And All Might takes a piece of his hair. I hope he washed it. Oh, I hope he washed it that day. And gives it to Midoriya and says, eat this. And you're like, wait, and Midoriya's like, hold on a second. Like, I didn't expect to get the power transfer like this. But that's the tea, though. Sometimes when God finally gives us the power, it comes in a packaging that we do not expect. But hey, it's still from the Lord, so you might as well go ahead and ingest it. So he eats this hair. Fast forward, we're getting to him. It's the first day at the school, and I'll go into that in the next episode. But the point is that Midoriya prepared himself to receive the blessing of All Might's power, one for all. Okay, so now that I've done the highlights, I want to go back and tie in all the scriptural references. Okay, so the first scripture I'm going to reference to like these 3 episodes and what they really mean is 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 17. And this is the story of David, who later went on to be king. For those of you who don't know backstory, David was like the smallest in stature of all of his brothers. He was a shepherd, and he would herd sheep and things of that nature. And, you know, he was often out in the field. His brothers got all the glory because they were big, tall, and strong, kind of like built like All Might, right? But now it's time for Samuel to go, and Samuel was a prophet. He's going to find a king to replace Saul because Saul was tripping and he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do. So it's time for a new king. So now we get into this point where Samuel goes to David's father and he's like, well, you know, where are your sons? And then he said, and God literally tells Samuel that none of these are the next king, even though from appearances they look like they should be. So then, you know, David comes along, and again, he's small in stature. He doesn't look, you know, physically like his brothers. He doesn't do the same things that they do. But he's mean with a slingshot. As those of you who be in the Bible know what I'm talking about. So anyway, this is the scripture of what God says to Samuel when he's asking, how could David be king when he doesn't look as strong and powerful as his siblings? So 1 Samuel 16:17 says, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees, since man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart, right? Now, if this doesn't tie in with Midoriya, I don't know what is, okay? Now, this is a kid who out the gate was told, you don't have a quirk, you're not strong, you're a loser, you're not going to make it, you're never going to be more than what you are right now, right? But here's the thing. That moment when he goes out to save Bakugo, who has a power, and he goes to save him with no power. That is how you know that he was supposed to be the one to receive one for all. Because, you know, just to tie it in, David ended up having to go and fight Goliath, okay? Now, for those of you who don't know, Goliath was like, in modern day times, Goliath would be like over 7 feet tall, huge guy, blah, 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 right? You know, really massive, could break people in half with like one hand or a pinky. But David went with like his rock and his slingshot, and he went woo, 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 okay? And he was able to knock down Goliath, and that was that. With all of that, now, even though that's not what happened in My Hero Academia, the heart that Midoriya had mirrors the heart that David had, all right? So they both had the heart of a king or the heart of a leader or the heart of a hero. And sometimes you have to have the heart to go forward, even though you don't know how it's going to turn out, but you know you can't just sit there and do nothing. And that is what activates All Might to get in the fight, even though he's exhausted and tapped out. So let's keep going with scripture references, right? So now we're going to go to Hebrews 1:11, okay? Hebrews 1:11 says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Keep in mind, the entire time that Midoriya was growing up, he was taking notes, watching heroes, studying them, studying All Might, because he deep down believed that he could be a hero. Now, he didn't know the how, and that's the thing that I think a lot of us get caught up in, and we get caught up in like how is it going to work, how is it going to come together, when all we really need to do is just use what we have and move forward, because the how is not your responsibility. God is in control of all the hows and how you're going to get there. You just have to do the work with what you got. And that's what Midoriya did, right? It's also similar to what David did. You know, David had some rocks and a slingshot. He didn't know how he was going to defeat this 8-foot giant. He couldn't even wear the armor that was supposed to protect him. But he still went full force and said, I know that God's got me, okay? I'm obviously paraphrasing, but essentially that's what he was saying. God's got me, so I'm going to go. I'm not scared of no Goliath, right? There's even a line where David says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? You know, being uncircumcised brought a lot of shade back in biblical times. But anyway, he said, who who is uncircumcised Philistine, that he should come for us. And he defeated him. So I really think that's an important thing to take away from My Hero Academia. In addition to that, I want to go back to the part where Midoriya was holding on to All Might when they first tried to get away from him, right? And this is a beautiful, because this mirrors one of my favorite passages in the Bible from Genesis. This is chapter 32, verse 26, okay? At this point, Jacob has run away because he stole his brother Esau's blessing. Because he ran away, he is now on the run, and an angel of the Lord appears before him. Now, we believe this was God in human form, or I believe, and I think a lot of other people would agree, but essentially this is like a chapter where it's like Jacob wrestles with God, right? So in the middle of him wrestling with God in human form, the angel of God, or God in human form, turns to him and says, "Then he said, 'Let me go, for it is daybreak.' But Jacob replied, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me,'" right? So even as Midoriya is holding on to All Might, holding on, the wind got his eyebrows about to come off, but he said, "No, I'm not going to let you go until I get a chance to speak to you, until I get to hear, basically get his version of a blessing." So those are some big things that I feel like came through the episodes. A couple more quick scripture references, all right? Now, this ties into episode 3. Episode 3, where we see Midoriya on the beach doing all this work to get ready to prepare himself to receive the blessing, okay? So, scripture reference here, Luke chapter 16, verse 10. "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much," okay? And then I'll also go to Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5. This says, "The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty," okay? Midoriya, when All Might said it's gonna take you 10 months, he said, 10 months? Like, what? I'm trying to get the power now. But All Might was like, no, but he stuck with it. He had a diligent plan, all right? And he didn't even have the power yet, but he got up every day. He created a schedule. He created a discipline. He changed the way he eat. He changed the way that he slept. He changed everything that he needed to do in order to receive this powerful gift that he eventually got, okay? And then, to tie it all in, this is my final scripture reference for these 3 episode conclusion. All right. James 1. Now, James 1 is one of my favorite books in the Bible. I love the first chapter. It's got so many gems in it. But James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 say this: "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything," okay? Now, this could tie in all 3 episodes in this whole intro, but you've got to persevere, okay? Because when you persevere through difficult times, which is exactly what not only Midoriya did in those 10 months, but he really was doing that in all the years leading up to him in meeting All Might. He just kept pushing and kept persevering, and he kept doing all the work because it made him strong enough to not only handle the blessing, but it just made him stronger mentally and spiritually and emotionally. And sometimes, we need to be strong in all these areas in order to handle the weight that comes with success and the next phase of life that God's taking you. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this episode up with some personal tie-ins, all right? So let's look at these themes here, all right? I could definitely relate to Midoriya's story. I've been a stand-up comedian for a little over 13 years, okay? And my journey has been anything but easy. Sorry for the background noise. I live in the trap. But anyway, so essentially, when I moved to Los Angeles, I moved here in August 1st, 2012 with $350 to my name. And I later got my car shipped over here, but didn't have a car the first 6 weeks I was here. I was sleeping on my friend's floor in her studio apartment. And, I didn't know what to expect, you guys. I can relate to some people telling me that I won't be successful, that things won't work out for me. I even had a close family member call me an F up and a failure and say that I was going to fall on my behind and I was going to fail and that I was just going to move to LA and nothing was going to work out. And this was a very close family member, and that it actually meant a lot that they said this because it really actually had the opposite effect of I think what they thought. I think they thought it would discourage me, but it actually encouraged me a little more to keep going. Growing up, I was acting in plays, singing in choirs, performing, but I always had the shyness about me because I grew up in a household where I was, taught that if I made a mistake, that there was something wrong with me. Like if I made a mistake or did something wrong, then it kind of like my mistakes were amplified and then my accomplishments were diminished. So I kind of battled a lot of my adult life with perfectionism and not feeling good enough and all of that. So doing this leap of faith, like moving to LA with plans of acting and singing and not having a game plan, was really like out of the box for me. No one in my family had ever attempted something like this before, so it was very scary. But it kind of reflected to like a lot of the stuff people told Midoriya. I still believe that I was called to do something higher than what I was doing, and I just didn't know how all of that looked. Now, about 3 months living into LA, I had a hectic time in LA. I lived with all these crazy roommates. One of them was actually a guy who threatened to kick me out and, leave my stuff on the street. And, I got physically threatened. I lived in an apartment with a guy who lied, and it turns out there was a bunch of roaches in the apartment, so I had to get out of there like ASAP, and I made him give me my money back, and that was scary. And just a lot of wild things. And I tell people what I was going through, and they laugh, which made me mad because I'm like, hold on now, I'm serious, okay? Like, I don't know why you're getting upset. So I ended up, being in my car, and like one day I decided I'm going to go to this open mic because everyone kept telling me when I tell them my stories, you should do comedy. And I was just like, whatever. So I tried it one day, honestly, because I just didn't want to go back to the crazy guy who threatened me. But when I go to the mic, I get on stage, and I don't know what I'm doing. Much like Midoriya didn't know what he was doing when he ran out to save Bakugo. I got on that stage, and I just vented, right? I just talked about everything that had happened my first 3 months in LA. I talked about all the pain, all the frustration, and I just let it out. Without a game plan, I just knew that I needed to get it out. At the end, all I felt was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I think I could equate it to like falling in love. And I was like, oh, I fell in love with comedy in that instant. I was like, oh no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be on stage talking about my problems, I guess, right? So, fast forward, it's been 13 years since that happened. But here's the kicker, right? Is in the last, I'd say year and a half, I've gotten a lot more yeses in comedy than I've gotten nos. There's been a lot of things that I've wanted in comedy for a very long time, right? And although I would have loved for it to happen in 10 months like it did with Midoriya, I realized that part of the reason why, and some people use the term made it or gotten on, part of the reason why I'm not have had to wait for certain blessings, I realize now, is because I was getting ready, right? Like that first time I got on stage, it clicked. I realized, oh yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like doing stand-up comedy for a living, like that is a big part of like my calling and the blessing, right? But in order to get to the blessing, some of which I'm experiencing right now, I had to go through those, the hard times, right? Which included like bombing on stage, which included going to open mics, being there for 3 hours and not getting up, or being there for 3 hours and only getting to do 2 minutes, or, trying to get on stages and being told no after no after no after no, listening to a set, especially a bad one, which is agony, right? And then you have to like, make all these notes and be like, okay, well, how can I get better? How can I get this funnier? Like, what can I do? Not being afraid to make mistakes, like going to therapy, going to the gym, and like, losing weight, gaining weight, and having knee surgery and having to learn how to walk again at 31. Like, I've gone through it all, and I will go into more detail as this series progresses. But I shared all that to say, y'all, one thing My Hero Academia, I think it shows is that not only does it mirror certain things in the Bible and in faith, but it also mirrors things in my life. And I'm still here today because in certain ways I had a Midoriya mindset, right? I've had a Midoriya mindset. I've been told that I should give up. I've been told that I should quit. I've been told that I shouldn't be doing comedy, or maybe no one's ever going to understand me, or maybe I'm, not skinny enough for this, or maybe my, I'm not as marketable as other girls or other people in comedy. Like, I have heard it all, but I'm so glad that God's voice has cut through it all, and that the inner child inside of me has never let me settle for what other people said. So, to wrap up this first episode of Academia Faith, I just want to encourage everybody that if you're going through something right now, I know the world is crazy right now. And I know part of you is like, well, why should I like even focus on my dream? Why should I go for that business? Why should I like start that podcast? And you know why you should start it is because starting when you don't have any evidence that things will succeed is the definition of faith, right? And one thing that I think Midoriya is going to show you as I go through this series is that this guy's got tenacity. And I know that deep down, if you look at yourself and you really ask yourself, you've got tenacity too. I mean, the fact that you even watched this full episode, I think is a sign that like you're looking for something deeper, right? And so I'm happy to be here, hopefully as a guide to connect you. I'm happy to share my story. And that wraps up, guys, this first episode of Academia of Faith. Stay tuned for my fan favorites. I am going to be, because season 8 of My Hero Academia, which is the final season, is now airing. They're going to be releasing one episode per week every Saturday. So guys, keep your eyes open and your ears peeled, because I'm actually going to be doing companion episodes as well. So my next episode is actually going to be season 8, episode 1, which is already premiered. And I'm going to make a completely separate episode of that. Please, 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 if you haven't watched My Hero Academia, just watch it. I know it's a lot, but I promise you it's a very bingeable series. The holidays are coming up, so if you haven't had the time, just trust me, it's worth it. I don't want you guys to watch season 8 and then you're just like, wait, what's happening? And you have to go back anyway. It's confusing. Trust me, it's worth the ride. So until next time, this has been Academia of Faith with your host, Chelsea Grow.